Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Southside Stories, the podcast where we talk to leading entrepreneurs, leaders, founders, particularly around London. And just a quick reminder, do subscribe or set notifications on to receive latest updates on forthcoming episodes. And we've got lots of great guests still to come. But with me today is Hamish White from Mobilise. Hello, Hamish.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. And we're going to talk about telco today. And I've actually worked for a few telcos in my career. In fact, I started my career at BT, which in those days in the mid-90s was pretty much just a landline operator. And then I worked for Voda for a while in Australia, then Optus, and then Singtel. So we've got a bit to chat about here.
Overlap there, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting up to speed on what the telcos have been up to and how you work with them. So, but Hamish, tell us about you to start off with. Tell us about who you are and where are you based, and just a top line to get us going on the company as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally Australian, which isn't that difficult to identify given my accent. But I left Australia when I was 25 in December of 2004, I think it was, if I've got my maths right there. So I've been away from Australia for a long time, and I feel very much more international than I do Australian. I've lived more outside the country my adult life in. So. But I've definitely got the Australian DNA, and I am quite pure breed telco. So I came straight out of my studies, started working for Orange, which was then bought by Hutch, and then which merged with Voda. But I've worked, I've been in telco for 25 odd years now, and I haven't been outside telco really. I've worked with some businesses outside telco, but always within the context of telco. It's been a long journey. I started very technically in my career. Like I was working in network operations in a 24-hour shift work. So I started right kind of at the bottom, I guess you could say, with no disrespect to anyone working in those functions. But then I worked through the layers of technology function into kind of software development type roles, project management roles, and project governance and investment into projects, within kind of like O2 in over in Europe and different organizations like larger telcos. And then I started Mobilise after being on the consulting trail for about 3 or 4 years in different parts of the world, in the Middle East, and worked in Europe quite a lot. That's kind of, to go into too much of the journey now, but that's kind of the rough journey of how I got to where I am.
Yeah, brilliant. And I was just thinking about my life at BT and then Voda. I was at Voda in Australia 2007. It was about a year or two before, or maybe 1 year before the iPhone came out. And of course that changed so much in terms of adoption of data, and then all the services that were built on the back of that. And you've done a few years more than that, so you've seen a massive change in the industry over those years.
Huge, yeah. I mean, when I was in Australia, I worked on one of the world's first. That was Ericsson's really big pitch. It was the world's first 3G deployment, and I worked on the implementation of it, and then also the network operations side of it. And there was a lot of with 3G, it's really unlocking data, and you got the internet, and it was a real inflection point in the industry. And as is the case with so many new innovations within the telco industry, there's a huge amount of hype that by and large doesn't get realized, at least not in the time frame that people expect. But then it did really change things in terms of what you could do with a mobile device. But then the iPhone was the real major inflection point. That's when things really started to accelerate in terms of what you could do with a mobile phone and a mobile service. I was working in O2 Telefonica in that same time before the iPhone came out, and there was this massive buzz around O2 Telefonica. Is this new initiative coming? It's going to be huge, and everyone that worked on it was up the wazoo with NDAs. Like you couldn't talk about it at all, otherwise you were going to lose your firstborn child. And so it was very, very hush hush, but it created this huge buzz. And then, of course, when it came out, it was like, wow, this is huge. This is going to change things, and it did.
It's interesting in telco, isn't it? Because for a while, it's one of those sectors that sort of it's hugely exciting for a while, wasn't it? Particularly around that time period. Mobile, when mobile first happened, I remember the Vodafone branding in the UK and the Dandy Warhols track. It was a super exciting industry to be in. And then it sort of went through this kind of commoditization phase. Do you still get excited working in telco?
That's a super good question. Yeah, like working for Vodafone was like everyone wanted to work for Vodafone. It's like they were the poster child, and I think that they were receiving thousands of CVs a day. It was the sexy place to work, and definitely went through a dip, and is still going through a dip. And at the very, very high level, you can look at the stock prices of most of the major telco groups, and they've all slowly, gradually declined over kind of 10, 15 years. With the exception of some, and particularly in the US. Yeah, it's gone through a cycle, and it's like, I'm sure it's got something to do with that. The fact that, traditional telco services have been commoditized and just not as sexy anymore. Like you buy your plan and then you sit on it for 24 months and that's kind of it. Whereas, and I think the other thing that's contributed to that as well is in the device side, even though we just talk about iPhone revolutionizing things, it's been almost 20 years now, and the incremental improvements from each new device release is much smaller than what it was, 10, 15 years ago. And so people don't get as excited about the new device that's come out as maybe what they used to. So all of that, I think, has contributed to like this whole theme of, telcos becoming bit pipes and just a commoditized utility, basically. It's lost a lot of its sexiness for sure. But I do get excited. I think there is a new change. I think there's a new wave of change coming in the telco industry. And it's hard to see that from the mass market perspective, but kind of being in some of the conversations that we're having, there's a few technological enhancements that have happened, particularly around a technology called eSIM, which replaces a physical SIM card. That enables a fully digital service, and that changes the business model and how you can deliver. So that's opened up new opportunities. But I think also the industry has gotten to a stage now where something has to happen. Something has to change. The margins are getting so squeezed. Consolidation's happening across the industry. There has to be a step change in order for the industry to kind of survive, but then grow for sure. So, and I think we're at that step change now. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening, which I can go into more detail on as well.
Well, let's do that. Let's segue into your company, Mobilise. Let's just start at the beginning, just with the basics. Just tell us what is it that Mobilise do.
So Mobilise, we provide a platform to the market called Hero, which is a software as a service platform. Really what that platform does is it helps operators to reinvent the way that they serve their customers, and particularly in digital channels. The next layer down of that, when that's kind of the sexy pitch to the stakeholders. When you get to the next level down of people in the know, it's a platform that allows telcos to deliver digital first propositions. So everything can be done via a mobile application, for example. So everywhere from purchasing a service to provisioning your SIM card over the air. So that's the eSIM thing that I mentioned there as well. Managing your payments, chatting with a customer service agent or a bot. A shift away from the traditional telecoms business model, which is very physically orientated. So you've got stores, you've got call centers, you've got a physical SIM card, towards everything being in the digital world. And I think the interesting thing is when you talk about the problem statement in the industry, is the interesting thing today is that sounds quite basic to achieve in today's world, because everyone's used to using apps, everyone's used to digital kind of service providers and brands. But the telco industry has suffered a little bit in this respect, in that they're not anywhere near, in terms of their digital experiences towards customers, they're not anywhere near the level of like a Facebook or a Netflix or an Amazon, but that's where people expect them to be. You know, users expect that digital experience across every digital brand that they engage with. But the telcos are probably, 5-7 years behind. And to be fair to them, it's complicated to do everything, run a network and deliver good digital experiences. But that's what we help them with. We help them with that transition away from the physical old school model to the digital new world model.
I always find it a little surprising in a way that the telcos, which fundamentally they're technology companies, it may not be digital services like Google or Facebook or whatever, but they are hugely competent providers of technology and services that live on them. But what are some of the challenges? Why do you think they are, as you say, 5 years behind? Some of it, I think, is just the way that the networks have layered up and added complexity into their systems. Is that some of it?
Yeah, like I'd classify that as like tech debt. So they've got a lot of legacy systems that are really hard to change, genuinely really hard to change, and very costly to change. When you iterate on top of a platform for 20 years, and then it becomes quite challenging and cumbersome to make change. So there's definitely that. I think there's also there's some cultural obstacles within the telco industry as well, and that a little bit to what we talked about before. Vodafone was the poster child, like it was the sexy place to go and work, and I think telco was sexy 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but it's not anymore. And I don't know whether the internal cultures for a lot of these telcos have caught up with that fact. So. It's like, do they really feel like they, need to change and adapt in the way that the industry is telling them they need to? And so there's some cultural stuff as well that's inhibiting, I think, a shift, but definitely technology. And I think actually one of the things that isn't talked about so much, but is a problem, is a lot of the telco industry at the exec level, it's very short-term incentive. It's incentivized in a very short-term way. So what are we doing this month? What are we doing this quarter? Don't tell me what we're doing in 5 years. You got to hit your numbers. You got to hit I want the stock price to stay at this level. I don't want to slide backwards because my KPIs depend on it as an individual, be that CEO or that executive. And I think that's a problem. It's I wouldn't even know where to start about how to change that cultural mindset. But I think that's a contributing factor too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. When you talk about the Hero platform and the services that you described there, they're sort of, they're very coupled with the provision of a telco service, billing, provision of eSIMs, etc. When I was at Singtel, it was the era where a lot of telcos were looking to build their own types of services away from core customer requirements. I mean, I'm talking about music services or news provision or aggregating some services. And I don't know how much of that. I mean, certainly Singtel closed a lot of that, and I don't know if there are any great examples of telco. Well, it's a question for you actually. Do you see any new services away from the core requirements of a customer interacting with a telco? Any other services that you're seeing or that the Hero platform could enable?
Yeah, definitely. And so within the Hero platform, the Hero platform, it's quite complex in terms of the features that it offers, and there is quite a lot in there. One of the things that we are starting to champion internally is this idea of a super app. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but it's where you have multiple different third-party services in one digital environment app that is tailored towards a specific customer segment or use case or whatever. Like Revolut in the UK would be a good example of that, where it's banking at the core, but it's a whole lot of other stuff that gets tied in as well. And so within Hero, we offer that type of a capability as well, where you can over and the top of just the core telco services, you can layer in other third-party products and services. And the use case there is, well, not the use case, let's say the objective is to combat against this commoditisation of core telecom services by adding other revenue opportunities on top and creating stickier service and better customer lifetime value, etc. So we do offer that as a solution in our platform, and there's a whole bunch of technical architectural design questions behind that allow us to enable us to deliver that effectively for our customers. But then in terms of what's happening out in the industry, like it's super interesting to see how things are unfolding in this type of a space, like the super app type space. And the telcos have definitely been trying to do it for a while, but it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And to be fair with the telcos, even with all the resources that they've got and, financial and people capital, all that kind of stuff, it's really hard to deliver on this type of an experience, super app experience, in quite a fickle digital environment, we live in today, because consumers, they won't accept any failings. If it doesn't work first time or it's not a good user experience, they'll just chuck it and go on to the next one. And it's really hard to do, when you're running a network, when you've got a core business to support, you've got core revenues to support, that kind of stuff. So I think by and large, that's one of the problems that the telcos face, is it's hard to execute on that strategy with everything else that they've got going on. But there are some examples, like Rakuten in Japan. They've got an incredible ecosystem that they exploit, and that's across like so many different industries, insurance, like e-commerce, mobile. It's incredible. They've got this really cool graph that shows it shows the core products in the middle and then all of the periphery services that sit around. And I don't even know how many there are, but they've delivered it into a really nice user experience and ecosystem, and it works really well for them. But what's interesting is, so the Asian, I would say the Asian-based operators have somehow, for some reason, tend to have done it quite well. Outside of Asia, I haven't seen too many that have done very well. Orange have got something called a Max app, which I think has been doing relatively well, but more in Africa. But the interesting thing that's happening around this is that with eSIM, and this is a kind of a feature that we name embedded connectivity within Hero, eSIM allows you to basically embed a mobile service into another digital landscape. So Revolut have done it as an example with eSIM. So within their Revolut app now, you can buy a mobile plan. And that's a complete flip of the business model. It's super interesting and very, very disruptive. So
that's really interesting, because you work with, who do you work with? What kind of telcos do you work with?
So we work with large and small, all ranges of telcos. So we work with large MNOs. So two of our customers are within the top 5 largest groups of MNOs globally. But then we also have mobile virtual network operators. So they're the telcos that rent frequency and spectrum from MNOs, from mobile network operators, so they don't have all the infrastructure. And then we also work with non-telco brands as well. So brands that are looking to add telco to an existing offering. So it's a kind of a broad spectrum and all sizes of organisation too. Yeah.
And what are some of your challenges as we're going to come on to your business and growth plans, but in terms of challenges of working with a big variety, because I think also across different geographies as well, but predominantly UK and Europe, is that right?
I'd say we've got customers pretty much in every region now. So Latin America, North America, Europe, Middle East, and Africa and Asia. And Africa and Asia, we don't have many customers. Like we've got one in each. But majority of the business is Europe and North America. That's where the majority of our business comes from. But it is growing. Like we've added quite a lot of customers in just 12 months or 18 months or so. So and that's one of the good things about the telco business model is it's pretty much the same wherever you go. So it's easy enough for us to well, as I say, easy enough. It's actually really, really hard to win customers, but the business model doesn't change massively wherever you go.
And when you look to what are some of the challenges, I mean, in terms of your growth story and acquiring new customers? I mean, I could probably guess at a few of them because telcos are they're quite often complex beasts.
Yeah.
Relationally, I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
also actually the technology platforms. Is there quite a lot of customization required as well from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. The so there's a lot of challenges. I mean, winning business with a big telco is the same as with every big organization, I guess. But I know from the telco perspective, it just takes forever, and quite long, tedious RFP processes, and then you go into procurement process, and then you go into a compliance process and a legal process, et cetera, et cetera. We've got, one of these, the large M&O customers that I kind of touched on before. It's been at least 18 months from start to now, and we still haven't launched. We're due to launch next month. And then there's another one where we're just about to. It seems like they're about to give us the deal, the contract, but it's been 2 years, so it's just such a long time.
Yeah.
So that's really hard because often you don't know either whether you're going to win that deal. You've got to commit 18 months before even knowing whether you're going to win it. So that's a huge drain for a small company. But then there's other, size of organizations that we work with too, which tend to move a bit quicker. And we're hopefully going to sign another contract where that's been, one of the guys told me yesterday, I think it's been 6 months end to end implementation. And there was some consulting stuff up front as well for about 6 to 8 weeks. So that's been pretty quick. But the sales cycle is brutal. And one of the things, the technology is brutal too. And one of the things that's one of the USPs of our platform is that we set aside their existing infrastructure and we try to do as little change on their network as possible, because otherwise you get stuck in 18-month project cycles, etc. But that's a big challenge too. Yeah. Yeah.
And the end benefit, I mean, when you package your the overall proposition, I mean, the benefits, the core kind of business benefits to a telco, I mean, what are they? Costs or additional revenue streams or improved customer service or all of the above? What does that sort of look like?
Yeah, it is. You kind of touched on it's all of the above, but I would distill it down into a couple of key ones. Is agility, so being able to move faster, and then being able to move faster, but then also that translates really into the ability to offer more digital focused customer service, digital focused products and services, catering to the generation of mobile consumers that are coming through now, which is the 20, 25, 30, or maybe a bit less than that as well, consumers that are going to be the ones that they want to retain over the long term. But there's a bunch of things, but really it's like it allows them the agility to move quickly, iterate new products and services, which leads to, better kind of incremental revenue opportunities, better customer lifetime value, more stickiness, etc., all the way to the bottom.
Mobilise, Hamish, where do you want to take it next? You've had, I mean, you've got some very impressive customers already. What does a growth plan for you look like over the next couple of years?
So I've got a pretty clear understanding in my mind about what the next 3 years holds. And to 2027, we've got some very specific financial KPIs. We've got some quite specific customer growth KPIs. And then we've got, more short-term operational KPIs and, the way that we want the business to be functioning from a delivery perspective. And so I think that's the path for the next 3 years, give or take now, 2.5 maybe. But I see along that journey, there's the possibility of an exit, and that could be to, I think probably the exit target would be a trade sale, so someone within the industry that likes what we do and finds us complementary. And then if that scenario unfolds, for me, it's to, then become part of a bigger banner, where we can then grow again. And maybe, personally, there is a second bite of the cherry, for a second exit afterwards. But otherwise, and I think this is really important, is that, I just want to enjoy growing the business with the people that are in it, and that we're on a life journey. We all spend so much time working. It's super important to be motivated by what you do, when you're there 8 hours a day working. So it's really important. The culture in the company is like, we've got to be having fun. We've got to be enjoying ourselves. We've got to want to be excelling and succeeding and doing well and being the best that we can be. But I think if we get that right, the other stuff will happen by itself, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, or one of many things that we coach on actually is, because a lot of people don't do this, is set the end date. Set the date at which your business will be finished. And sounds like you have a very clear view of that. Even though the 2027 date, there's another span after that as well. But have you always had that? I'm curious. Have you always had that date in mind? Is that a recent thing, or?
No, yeah. I mean, I've, yeah, my own journey as a manager of the business has been evolving a lot and changing, and I didn't give enough credence, probably, not to be critical, but I didn't give enough emphasis, on those types of objectives and being clear about them. Before, say, 12 months ago, I'd be like, no, let's grind, let's push. We've got this, we've got that, let's do it, we're doing it. But then what I've, come to, I think, appreciate more is it's important to have those goals and those milestones. It gives everything else under a sense of direction. But I didn't really do that before. So it's something that's a little bit newer in the last kind of 12 months or so.
Let's switch to team then, and leadership, because that's always an interesting area. How many people have you got in the organisation now?
So we're growing quite quickly. I think we're around about 60 or so. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but about that. Yeah.
And how do you find, I mean, talking about your growth challenges or ambition there, and how do you find the talent market right now? I ask because a lot of businesses say to me, talent is quite difficult, especially since Brexit. London has got challenges where we're based. How are you finding that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult, I think. And there's so many factors that play into it. I think, like Brexit, I think there was a bit of a talent drain, which shrunk the pool somewhat in terms of available people. I think quite often in highly skilled areas as well, like in software development and technology. But there's also challenges around cost of living and, with the economy the way that it is at the moment. I think also it's, my customers don't want to pay more, but my staff are asking for more, and it's getting squeezed in the middle. And it's tough. And yeah, I think people have, unfortunately, it'll turn around, but I think unfortunately in the UK there has been a little bit of a drain of resources and talent and knowledge, and it's tough. It is tough. Yeah.
How has your leadership changed over the years? Did you start this with a co-founder, or have you always?
This is me. Yeah.
And then you started as just you, and then now you've got a team of 60 and growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what time frame has that been over?
So I started Mobilise in December 2011. It was the official incorporation date, and I took the first contract, we started as a consulting business. I was consulting to companies wanting to set up telcos. And about 3 years in, we started software development. So I had a small a team that were working on quite bespoke solutions. We went further in on the software side, and then that's when we got investment and grew from there. But yeah, I mean, it is crazy to think. I literally was myself on my first consulting gig back in 2012. So it's pretty crazy to think that it's now 60 people. But, you know, I used to be maybe somewhat impressed by the size of my team, but honestly now all I see when I think about the size of the team is responsibility and checks at the end of the month. And that's cool. I love it. It's fine. But it's not it's something that gives me a sense of responsibility as opposed to like, oh, I've got 60 people in the business, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How do you think your leadership style, how do you describe your leadership style now? And how has it changed over the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's a really pertinent question right now. And I'm going through quite a bit of self-reflection about my leadership style. And I, geez, I don't even know how to answer it, to be honest with you. And so I would say that I believe I foster a sense of, you know, a positive, a sense of positivity towards your job. Like you've got to be enjoying your job in order to be able to want to do it. You know, you've got to like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's not always easy, obviously, because there's always crap that goes with every job. But so I try to instill that within the company. It's like, guys, we're going to be having fun. Let's enjoy ourselves. I try to start meetings with, a bit of humor and, I try to have that lighthearted kind of feel towards work. But I'm a technical guy. I'm very detail orientated, and there's absolutely no doubt that I would have been referred to as a micromanager at some point in my management career. And I think there's different levels of that. When I micromanage, I try not to be negative in the way that I do it. It's hopefully more supportive as opposed to criticizing style of management. But I think I do think that I'm evolving quite a lot. I'm trying to evolve, and one of the things that we just had our annual performance reviews, and I got some feedback from some of the senior SLT that you've got a good team around you. You know, you can step back now. You know, focus on running the business as opposed to focus on kind of growing the business and running the business as opposed to what's happening day to day in the business.
Yeah.
And I also had some quite difficult circumstances in the last couple of months regarding a particular employee, which really made me reflect as well, particularly about my management style. And so I've been doing a lot of reflection. I actually read a book recently called Five Dysfunctions of a Team. I think it's called. I can't remember, Patrick. Someone. I can't remember the name of the last name of the gentleman wrote it, but it's really interesting book, and it's about five areas of a team that you need to be aware of and to be focusing on, and it revolves around trust and accountability and all the things that go into making a team work properly and successfully, and the theme of it is teamwork. Yeah, sorry, I actually went through a massive rant there, but
No, that's great. I mean, I think
yeah.
That I think that would be familiar to a lot of founders, especially that dual thing actually of, if you are that, some of it's personality and some of it's sort of, the growing up and really being focused on technical delivery and the need to be detailed, especially the complexity of, what you've been delivering. Plus, I also think that if you've started a business and you kind of done every role there is there, right? You've done the hard graft of figuring out the systems and the delivery and the working with the software engineers, and then you've probably done the sales and business development, and you've basically done it all.
Yeah.
And then there's that point where I think a lot of founders find it quite hard to step back, or because there's a trust thing. There is can this other person do it better than I can? There's all sorts of things in that mix. So I think it's a very common thing. And I think it's great that you've recognized it. And it's actually great that your leadership team found were, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but were able at least to tell you about it as well. And actually that probably tells you something that you are doing right. And the fact that they were able to share that, and the fact that now you're already reflecting on it as
Yeah.
well. The other thing, as you were talking, actually, I read this book by, and I've listeners to the podcast will know I've mentioned this a few times, but it's by Dan Sullivan, and it's 10x is easier than 2x. And it's not really about teams, but one of the things in there that really struck me is that he uses lots of examples of when you're growing a business, is there's a 20% of your role where you add exceptional value. And there's 80% where, especially if you've now got a leadership team that are very competent, here's this all about jettisoning the 80% to finding other ways to do that, whether that's a team or whatever, and then focusing on the 20%, and then the 20% becomes the new 80%. And he gives some very vivid examples of how that iterated over time in very fast growing companies where the leader is iterating and the company's kind of growing in step. It's quite interesting.
That's
So you might want
interesting.
to give
I'll have a look at that one.
a
Yeah.
look. Yeah. Great. Well, we're almost out of time. We could talk about that for ages, but I find the whole area of leadership really fascinating.
Totally.
I am sure that in your business, you have got lots of people there who think, oh, Hamish is a great guy. He's been a great leader. And, you've had a really positive impact. Who for you has been a really positive impact? And, I ask this question every time and we have lots of different answers. And I find it fascinating because quite often there is a couple of key people that have had a huge influence all the way through a career. And quite often that person doesn't know about it either. So who's that person being for you? Or it could be a couple of people.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's three that come to mind quickly. My mum, actually, she was an entrepreneur and has run a bunch of businesses. She has a work ethic which is very, very strong. She's also got an intelligence about business which I think is innate in her. And so I've taken a lot from my mum. But there's two other people. There's a gent who works in the business who I've known for probably 15 years, and he's been like a mentor to me for a long time. I think he always says on calls with potential customers or others that he's like, I've worked this many years and Hamish just keeps bringing me back in. He won't let me retire. So he's at that point in his career. But and I talk to him probably 2 or 3 times a week, and he's a fantastic sounding board. And then actually, the investor in Mobilise, the first investor in Mobilise, he's been really instrumental in me kind of, I guess I'd say he's been hugely supportive, but how to be a partner in business is probably what I could summarize his impact on me. He's been a fantastic influence and a huge support to the business and continues to be. So, yeah, few different ones, not one.
Well, that's great. That's a great, yeah, brilliant. That's a great mix there. An investor, a senior employee, and your mum. And I agree, mums have a huge impact on the way that we conduct ourselves and they instill us, the direction and the drive often. So that's great to reflect on that. Brilliant. Hamish, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Best of luck as you march towards that 2027 goal. I think you're going to smash it from what I can make out from this conversation.
Thank you. I hope so. Yeah. We'll get there. But Matt, thank you so much. It's been really interesting. And like we were saying when we were doing some of the prep calls for this, it's not always common that you find people, within this kind of the telecom field, but then have branched out into this kind of industry type leadership position, podcasts and thought leadership and mentorship and stuff like that. So for me, it's been really interesting to see the overlap there. It's been quite useful. So I appreciate it.
Great stuff. Thank you for that. I've really enjoyed it too. Hamish, thanks so much. We'll let you crack on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Take care.
Cheers.